a good day to have this next guest on the program. We welcome Brian DiFonzo. Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good morning, Luke. Good morning, Mark. How are we all doing this fine Monday morning, a day after Super Bowl?
Is that what you'd call that, Super Bowl? Super? No, it was an all right game.
Yeah, we were talking about it beforehand. Luke, you make a good point. The league seems to want offense. Well, there is a defense to the game too, and certainly you have to make the good argument that the Denver Broncos defense certainly did come to play last night. They made life miserable for Cam Newton.
They did. At every turn, it seems.
He hadn't been hit, and he hadn't been nerved up in a game all year long, with the exception of maybe that loss to Atlanta there in Week 15 of the season. Yeah, but you're right, Lucas. We want offense. We got defense, and I thought the better team won last night.
Well, going into the game, of course, everybody talked about if there was any hope for Denver, it would be on the defensive side of things, and
oh, they certainly got it.
They got it, yeah.
They certainly got it.
Is this it for Peyton? Is he done?
I would think that and I think Peyton is a very smart person and one of the best ambassadors for the game the NFL has ever had. If I was in his shoes, I've got nothing else to prove. I'm in good health. I've got 2 Super Bowl trophies in the hopper. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame in 5 years. At least I should be. I'd walk right out of the sunset a la Jerome Bettis with that Super Bowl trophy in hand. Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's kind of what I said, but not quite as well.
We are on the air, Mark, so we try to keep it clean.
Well, Brian, tell us what's going on. What's been happening with you?
Well, thank you for having me back, Lucas. And I know over here in Titusville, they're going to be celebrating something very similar, but over in Meadville, for the Western Crawford County Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Family Services, we are also having Bowl for Kids' Sake, and that will be the triumphant return to Meadville's Plaza Lanes on April the 2nd, 2016. The plan is that we're going to have bowling from 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. We'll have in 2-hour sessions, and what we want is kind of family friendly for the day, and then during the evening maybe a little bit more adult oriented. We're just in the preliminary stages right now. I've got a few teams signed up here and there. Got a couple of small sponsors lined up, and but again, the people at Plaza Lanes have been nothing but fantastic. I've got a committee of folks from the Meadville area, about 6 of us, and then a couple of members of my team that are working and striving to put this thing back out there for the community.
You've been working hard behind the scenes, and it's basically rebuilding from scratch. You're starting with a brand new foundation, which is good, but at the same time, that takes a little bit of time.
Yes.
Talk about that process and where you're at now.
Sure, Lucas. Yeah. We did not have access to any of the records from the previous program. So, yeah, like you had mentioned, Lucas, we were pretty much starting from an absolute clean slate from the ground up. And with that does come opportunity. But yet at the same time, it also becomes a challenge because, anybody who we are bringing into the program are pretty much brand new to the program. But that has produced some good results here in the short term. Right now, we have 6 community matches. That's what the classic matchup of an adult mentor with a child. It's what Big Brothers and Big Sisters is kind of known for. But what we also do is we'll also set up what we call site-based areas. That's where we'll go to after-school programs, and we'll provide mentorship, usually in hour chunks, an hour a week. And 90% of the time, these are being filled by college kids. And, of course, over in Meadville, we're talking about students from Allegheny College. And we have 7 mentor-mentee relationships in the site-based program right now. Right now, I have a waiting list of about 12 children, and all the volunteers who I've trained so far have now been matched up with children. So, wow. Yes, there's, and again, it's endemic in our program. We can always use volunteers, and we can use volunteers in many different ways, but if people want to know, are there kids out there that are waiting to be matched? Absolutely, there are children out there to be matched, and we want to find good people to match them up with.
I was wondering, when you talk about the on-site program and college students, How do you attract a college student to do something like that? Is it a different strategy from getting an adult to actually take on a little?
Yeah, there is, Mark. And sometimes the focus to be able to reach these kids, it's a little bit more focused. Let me give an example. At the beginning of the year, a lot of colleges, what they'll have, they'll go by different names, but here's a general name, an involvement fair. Okay, and usually at these involvement fairs, you have different organizations that are out there recruiting members. We often get included at these involvement fairs, and we'll set up a booth and we'll have information there. I have a Vista helper, Kayla Moss, who helps me out with this, and she is the one who's really the driving force behind the site-based program. She's the one who physically will go to the college and set up that table and interact with these children. Now, I'll sometimes interview these children as well. I should say the students. I should say I'll help interview them. But again, this is something that I've put into the hands of the Vista. I just kind of oversee what she is doing at this point. But often it's those recruitment fairs, and then not to mention getting in touch with the right people at the university, like you maybe get in touch with the academic advisor who is maybe in charge of a particular, either a fraternity or a social organization. You try to get in with them, and then they will have us at a meeting, and we'll sometimes make a presentation and sometimes get some mentors that way as well.
Excellent.
We live in this fast food, society today, and I'm sure you get people who say, "I'd love to be a big brother or a big sister, but I want to do it like right now." What's the process? How long does it take before somebody's actually matched up with a kid?
Well, it depends, Luke. Let's take the case in point of a person who's lived in Pennsylvania their whole lives. Okay, if you've lived in Pennsylvania your whole life and you have a clean criminal background check and you have a clean child line welfare check, those are the two main barriers right there. And right now, I got to give the state legislature a little props on this. They recognize that since organizations such as mine seek these clearances on a regular basis, that there was a problem. Okay, there was a problem. There's a little bit of logjam in getting these things, processed. And the second part of the logjam was the cost that was associated with it. Well, the legislature has kind of helped break through that challenge. If you are coming to me and you want to volunteer for my organization, I'm going to ask you to authorize me to do a state police background check on you. It costs my agency nothing. It costs you nothing. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got the child line welfare check. What I will do is I'll send you a link, and then you will go onto the computer yourself and basically do a background check on yourself. And then you will furnish me the results. And again, if you are doing this for volunteer purposes, it costs you nothing. It costs me nothing. Now, the only other barrier to getting the clearances, if you've lived out of the state of Pennsylvania anytime within the last 10 years, I'm going to ask you for those two background checks, but I'm also going to ask you for an additional fingerprinting check. This is what teachers go through, and this is what I had to go through to get my position. And there is a cost that is associated with that. If it becomes prohibitive to the volunteer, we will work with the volunteer. But typically, the fingerprint background check, that costs around $27. That right there, Luke, would lengthen the process because you've got about a week to 2 week processing time for that. But let's say in most circumstances, if you've lived in the state, your whole life, and you've lived a good life, I should be able to, match you up within a month.
Wow.
Usually within a month.
So it's not like a 6-month process.
No. It is not a 6-month process. And also, too, let me get back to the kids at Allegheny. Yeah. Okay, they often will go through all 3 clearances just to be on the safe side.
Wow.
And it is the college who works with us on there. In fact, we will just go to the advisor and say, listen, these are the particular children who have shown an interest. Okay, then we will make sure that you have your needed documents on those particular mentors. So the colleges will help us out in that regard. Yes,
that's wonderful.
So the cost of doing something like this shouldn't be a deterrent to someone.
Absolutely, Mark. Right. It should. Yeah, the cost to getting involved with the program should be negligible. I would say.
And speaking of cost, do you hear that from people who say, "Well, I've thought about doing it, but just the extra cost of taking, my match to a movie or this or that, and it's just too expensive. You don't have to do that stuff. It's just about spending time with this person.
Right. And this is where the caseworkers such as myself can come in and help and provide some good guidance along to the volunteer. And we have a training manual that the safety training of which they must also go through. And in that safety training manual, Lucas, are fantastic ideas of how to talk to the child based upon their age. And then there's another pages of recommended activities dependent upon the age of the child. And what we really profess, what we want them to do, we want them to do high impact, low cost activities. And you had mentioned the fact that, sure, going to McDonald's every once in a while, going to the movies every once in a while is perfectly acceptable. But we certainly don't want the volunteer to be burdened with the thought that every time that they go, with their little, if they will, that they're expected to open up their wallet and spend this great gobs of money. No, that's furthest from the case. Some good examples of what we considered high impact, what we call high impact, low cost. The matches in my program, they get a blanket membership to the YMCA. Go to the YMCA. They've got a rock climbing wall over there at the one in Meadville. Go rock climbing with the kid. If the child is proficient enough in swimming, to the ability to go in all parts of the pool, you can go swimming for an afternoon. Going for a ride on a bike. They have the Ernst Trail. We love our trail over here in Titusville, but they have the lovely Ernst Trail over there in Meadville when the weather's a little nice. And not to mention, what we also recommend is don't forget to tap into the natural resources that Crawford County in this area has to offer. You ever been over to Woodcock during the summertime? It's absolutely gorgeous over there. To take a short drive down to the spillway down in Pymantuming and go buy a half a loaf of bread and go over and feed the carp, and you go tell me how much fun your kid's going to have doing that. Okay, these are all examples of items that should not cost a lot of money, but yet you get the high impact because you get that good interaction between the big and the little. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, Luke.
Yeah, we're here with Brian DiFonzo. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. So when it comes to the littles, what is it that that drew them to the program? Is it parents are too busy? Maybe they have one parent. Maybe they're just looking for somebody to talk to. How much more goes into it other than just hanging out? Because to me, it seems like it's time for that. For the adult to maybe listen to what the kid has to say.
Sure.
And to be there for them.
Yeah. Again, we want them to form a friendship/partnership with the child. And yes, we want them to be able to build this relationship up to the point where the child has pretty good trust in them. And if they feel that there is a matter that they want to go to them, maybe they feel a little more comfortable talking to another trusted adult rather than a parent. They may be a little embarrassed to maybe talk to a parent about that. Yeah, that is very central to what we hope happens in these matches, because this is where you start to see the impacts, the positive impacts. And Luke, to go right along with what you're saying, that's why we ask our volunteers to commit to the program for at least 1 year. These positive statistics that I could just rattle off my sleeve about the benefits to these children after a year's worth of mentorship, that's the key. It's after a year's worth of mentorship. They've had opportunity to develop a trust and friendship with each other. They're going to start to know what each other likes and dislikes. And then also, too, they're going to start picking up on the nonverbal cues. Okay, at first, I just go back into my experience. In my first few times where I worked with my little, I didn't know what his facial expressions meant, but I'll tell you what, after about 6 months after I got to know this kid, oh yeah, he knew what the facial expression meant, and I can tell you on the other side of the coin, he knew what my facial expressions meant too. So it works both ways, and that's what we want. That's what we want, because if done right, these are relationships that can last a lifetime rather than just a year's match.
And so it takes some time to build these up. It's not going to happen on the first
Absolutely
try.
not. And Mark, to go along with what you just said, what we also recommend to the mentors is in the first couple of months of the match, do things outside your home. Don't bring him or her to your home for the first 2 months of the match. Get a chance to know each other, and just as importantly, during that 2-month time frame, the big can then set the rules of what this is how you conduct yourself when you're at my house. This is what you're allowed to do, and this is what you're not allowed to do. So it's all about that, Mark, building it up. It isn't going to happen on the first match. Absolutely not. These relationships take time, and again, you have to have the willingness to take that time to be able to have this come to fruition.
We live in a state where everybody's well aware of the Sandusky situation.
Yes.
Has that hurt organizations like yourself when it comes to doing anything with kids?
Luke, it does. It has an effect because people start to question things. And unfortunately, people start to question things that we know that are good. But we've all been around the block long enough to know no matter how much good there is in one thing, it only takes one bad thing to kind of spoil it. And yeah, the Sandusky, I think, whole cases made us all kind of sit back and maybe take a harder look at just exactly how are we doing what we are doing. And I know the organization has tried to respond to that by stepping up the efforts in the background checks, and then not to mention the efforts that we do as an agency to try to train our volunteers, because yes, they are what they call mandated first reporters. I train my volunteers on how to spot child abuse. And again, it's a funny way to look at it, but I think if you think about it for a second there, Lucas, it makes sense. That when I'm training my volunteers for this is, I liken it to, and Mark, you'll remember this movie. Luke, you were just a little boy, but maybe you did see it in reruns. I'm talking about the classic Karate Kid movie with Mr. Miyagi. Yeah, okay, all right. You remember when they were out on the lake and Daniel's trying to stand on the boat and they're talking about karate.
Yeah.
And he asks them the question, why do you think, I'm teaching you this, And of course, at first he says to beat up these kids. And Mr. Miyagi reminded him, goes, no, that's not why. I'm teaching you this so you don't have to use it. But if you have to use it, he's saying, but if you have to use it, you'll know how. That's the same philosophy that I take with these volunteers when it comes to this safety training. Lord forbid you ever have to use it, but if you do have to use it, you better know how, and that's what we train them to do.
And that's good. We just live in a society today, I think, where it's difficult if you're a coach or if you're doing anything with kids. I mean, a slight pat on the back to say good job is almost questionable to some people now.
Right.
So it has to be, difficult, again, when you're dealing with kids, but it sounds like you have good things in place to maybe ease some of those discomforts.
Sure. And it's been a question that's come up. Lucas, it has, when I've gone and spoken to people, not necessarily the Sandusky case in particular, but, they do ask about this. Well, again, just like anything else in life, the best way to arm yourself is to become knowledgeable. And the more knowledgeable that you become about the subjects, the better are that you arm yourself in terms of how to deal with it. We like to think that with the training that we get, that we are arming these people with the basic knowledge that they would need to be able to act on it. And to go further along that, Lucas, if, Lord forbid, they ever did come into a situation where they feel that they needed to report it, granted, it is up to the individual to do the reporting, but they can come to my agency and they can make the call, and I will be there to support them with their call. And then here's the other thing that the legislature did. If we ever had to make that call, we make that call to the proper authorities. We tell them what we know. Then the authorities take it over. No backflap can be done against the person who reported. There are laws on the books to protect them, even if it's unfounded. Okay, there are laws on the books to protect the reporter, and then at that point, Childline Services takes it over. They do their investigation, and they pretty much take it from that point on. So that's another thing that I tried to tell the volunteers to try to calm their fears a little bit if they were a little bit bit apprehensive.
Brian, we're going to have you back. Real quick, recap the big event coming up.
Absolutely. Bowl for Kids Day coming up on April the 2nd at Plaza Lanes in Meadville. Please give my office a call, 724-4807, extension 135. Also, too, we also do look for volunteers. I've got kids on the that need to be matched up with good adult mentors. Please call my office. I'd love to tell you how you could go about becoming a mentor.
Excellent. Brian, great to see you this morning.
Oh, great to see both of you. I've been seeing you at basketball games. That's not a bad thing, though.
No.
Hopefully we'll see you at a couple of more here before it's all said and done.
Been a good season for the Rockets.
Yes, it has, and good for them.
Absolutely. All right, Brian, have a great week.
Thank you.
The morning drill will continue right after this, and we've got a final look at news coming up next.
And the sun went down as across the hill, and the town lit up, the world got still. I'm running